Tonight we're in Dundee, Scotland's fourth biggest city and home to the largest yes vote in the independence referendum. The SNP held on to Dundee at last year's general election, but Labour were hot on their heels and the Holyrood election is now just 7 months away. Tonight local people from across the area have joined us to have their say on the big issues of the day. Welcome to Debate Night. Debate Night is where you get to ask the big questions, answering them on our panel this evening. From Scottish Labour, the party spokesperson for finance, Marra. Born in Dundee, Michael joined the Labour Party as a teenager and was elected as MSP for the North East Scotland region 4 years ago. He's been tasked with working on the party's manifesto for next year's Holyrood election. Also with us, Scotland's Minister for Drug and Alcohol Policy and Sport, Maree Todd. The SNP MSP for Caithness, Sutherland and Ross. Maree spent over 20 years working as a mental health pharmacist in NHS Highland before entering politics. Dr. Yekemi Otaru is an entrepreneur and Chancellor of the University of the West of Scotland. Born in Nigeria, Yekemi moved to the UK in 2003 to work in the oil and gas industry. She's passionate about mentoring entrepreneurs, particularly in underrepresented communities. Also with us from the Scottish Conservatives, Douglas Lumsden, former co-leader of Aberdeen City Council. Douglas is now MSP for North East Scotland and the party spokesperson for Net Zero and Energy. And finally, from the Scottish Greens, Ross Greer. Ross was 21 and the youngest ever MSP when he was first elected to Holyrood 10 years ago. Last month, he became the youngest leader of a party at Holyrood when he was elected Scottish Greens co-leader. Please welcome them all to Debate Night. And welcome to our studio audience here in Dundee. It's great to be back with you. And you can join in the discussion from home, wherever you happen to be. In Scotland, BBCDN is the hashtag you need if you're on social media. And our Debate Night podcast will be available for you to download straight after the show. So let's get started tonight. Our first question comes from Pauline Cuse. Pauline,
Hi.
evening.
Evening. Why are so many other political parties scared of the Reform Party?
Thank you, Pauline. Hearing a lot about reform at the moment, aren't we? Latest poll shows them neck and neck with Labour here in Scotland. Ed Davey mentioned them 30 times in his party conference speech. Heard about them again and again from the Prime Minister yesterday. What do you think, Pauline?
I say give them a chance. We're sick to death of fighting in SNP, Labour, everybody fighting. It's a time to give another Reform Party a chance.
Michael Marra, you're just back from the Labour Party conference where Keir Starmer was very keen to talk about reform. Nigel Farage said afterwards, we'll teach Labour a lesson in next year's elections that British politics will never forget. Are you scared of them?
I wouldn't say we're scared of them, but it's a big change, isn't it? And I think that the lady in the audience references that. It's a new voice on the political stage, and they're garnering a lot of support. So we are obviously concerned about that, both as a Labour Party in Scotland and across the UK, and there are a variety of reasons for that. I think...
well, she told you what the reasons are. She's fed up.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a real challenge in this for all the existing political parties, that we have to make sure that we can deliver change. And there's a real frustration about the lack of change across the whole of the country. Now, the Labour government in the rest of the UK has been in just for 15 months now, but it's in one of the worst economic inheritances possible in terms of the finances and the state of public services. And there's an awful lot of work to do. And I believe we've started that job, but there's an awful lot of people who are very frustrated at the pace of change. I fully agree with that. And also, I think that that in itself isn't something new either. You can go back to the independence referendum where people were asking for change there as well. So there is a real threat in terms of that. But what comes with it, I think, is absolutely key that we look at this, is that the policies and some of the politics that they are bringing to the fore, I don't think represent many of the people in Scotland and the values that we have. We want to be an open and welcoming country. a diverse country that celebrates that diversity as a strength rather than a weakness. And that is part of the reform politics. But I do think that we'll have to address both that side of the issue, but also the causes. The causes about the fact that we look at the last Parliament, it was the worst set of circumstances for people's earnings in the history of democracy in this country. Absolutely stagnant wage growth and appalling economic inheritance has come through it. And people are feeling that on their day-to-day lives. An NHS in Scotland that's in real crisis, a cost of living that is completely out of control. Okay. We need to get on top of that. We've started that job. Mortgages are £1,500 down. The wage growth is higher in the last 10 months than it has been in the previous 10 years, but there's so much more to do. So it's about delivery, but it's also making sure that we take this fight head on for the values of the country, but also for its future.
And that's what the Prime Minister was attempting to do yesterday. Douglas Lumsden from the Scottish Conservatives. The question, why are the other parties scared of reform? You should be scared of reform because it's destroying your party right now.
I wouldn't say we're scared, but we're mindful of what's happening. And like Michael said, a lot of people are fed up with politics. They don't feel their lives are getting better.
Including one of your former MSPs who's just defected to them.
Yeah, of course. And, we had an MSP defect to the Liberals as well. And, I think that's a shame. I don't like to see anybody leaving the party. But I think, people are angry. And then you have someone like Farage will promise people the world, but not actually have any policies behind it. So you can see why people are attracted to it. But I think, I think people have got to be really careful what they're voting for in 7 months' time. If you vote for somebody like Farage with no leader in Scotland, no real policies in Scotland, I think it's a dangerous thing. We don't even know if they're in favour of the union, for example. So, there's a lot of question marks, and hopefully that will get sort of picked on as we have the run-up to the election.
OK, well, we don't obviously have Reform with us tonight. They will be on a future edition of the programme, but we do have Reform supporters in the audience tonight, so I'd be keen to hear from them. What is attracting them at the moment? We've got hands up already, though. Lady in the front, what would you like to say?
Well, I'm not a Reform supporter, but I used to work in the NHS. 42% of the NHS staff are migrants or second-generation migrants. If Nigel Farage cancels the permanent leave to remain, what's going to happen to our NHS and what's going to happen to our economy? Because we need these people.
Thank you. And lady on the front here, yes.
You say that you're not scared and you need to be mindful. You need to be petrified. This is how Trump got in, because of the disenfranchised people first. So I understand what you're saying, and maybe you can't say it in public, but I'm absolutely telling you, you must take heed, because folks are feeling that disenfranchised in the UK. They're not getting the right information. You're absolutely right. It is a racist party, and we do not want that anywhere near our country.
Maree Todd, you just nodded when that lady said they're a racist party. Is that how you view Reform?
So I think the two women in the front row there made absolutely outstanding points. I worked in the NHS for 20 years, and immigrants come to this country and they contribute hugely. I come from a part of the country where we don't have enough people, where we see social care homes closing due to lack of staff. So absolutely, I would have to say to Michael, we absolutely cannot fight Farage and his like by mimicking him. And I am very unhappy about the measures that have been brought in by a Labour government to clamp down on immigration, to make it harder for people to come here and work in our health and social care system. That is not helping us at all. I agree with the other lady who said that that's a racist party. I am quite shocked at the traction that they are getting. I recognise that populists are very dangerous. They say things that reasonable people wouldn't say.
So if you're saying Reform are a racist party, what does that make the people who support Reform?
So I think that they are taken in. They look convincing. They say the things you want to hear. People are feeling very
Isn't that
disenfranchised.
hugely patronising to suggest that people are just taken in
People
by
are feeling
a political message?
People are feeling very disenfranchised all over the UK. We are one of the richest countries in the world, and they are not feeling rich. This country is not working for them. The way things are is not working for them, and that is why they are attracted by people with simple messaging like Farage and his ilk. We saw in the Hamilton by-election, they brought out a series of campaign leaflets that were absolutely appalling towards Anna Sarwar. I have no time for that in Scotland, and I think Scottish people have no time for that either.
OK. Pauline, who asked the question, has got her hand up.
On about is illegal immigrants. I'm not on about, I work for the NHS, and I know I've worked there for 20 years, and I know what the problems are with staffing and things like that. I'm on about the illegal immigrants that come, and when Stammer says one in, one out, but he's bringing boats with 250 people at a time and just putting them in anywhere and everywhere.
And let me tell you, the reason we have such a high level of illegal immigration in this country today is because of Brexit. It is because the regulations. So Nigel Farage is an absolute snake oil salesman. It is partly his responsibility and his campaign for us to leave the EU, which has left us without the regulations and the arrangements with the continent to prevent the small boat.
Okay.
He is a snake oil salesman, and we should not be taken in by him.
All right, I want to hear from more people in the audience. Gentleman in the second back row. Yes, on you go. Yes, you.
Yeah. Just the more that the mainstream parties try to take a superior moral attitude over people who are concerned about illegal migration and continually call them racist and far right, the more traction Reform are going to get.
You think that's playing into Reform's hands, that kind of language?
To keep calling you racist if you're concerned about migration doesn't mean you're far right.
OK, thank you. And man in the middle here with the glasses. Yes, on you go.
Yeah, don't you think that illegal immigration is going to be increasing as long as they make it so easy for them when they come here? Put them in hotels, give them everything that God ever sent. And, they're not going to stop. They're going to keep coming as long as it is, and we can't get rid of them. They don't get rid of them. Too many lefty lawyers sitting there with the book that your boss wrote, and we just can't move them on.
I think we have a broken immigration system.
I have no problem with people coming here if they're bringing a benefit to the country. If they're coming, they want to work illegally, they want to live like us. I think maybe we need to look at what's happening here.
Okay.
I mean, nobody seems to want to address it.
Well, let's do that now. Ross Greer, the question, why are so many other political parties scared of the Reform Party? Hamilton by-election, 26% of the vote went to Reform. You got 2.6% of the vote. Is that why you're scared of them?
Look, let's be honest, the guys who run Reform are absolute chancers. They claim to be patriots, but the guy who just led their party in Wales has just been convicted of taking bribes to shill for Russia. What kind of patriot shills for Putin? Reform are taking advantage of the fact that a lot of people are angry right now. People in the UK, people in Scotland, are right to be angry. But it is not illegal immigrants, it's not refugees, it's not asylum seekers who are making our lives more difficult. It's greedy landlords, it's tax avoiders, it's billionaires. Our enemies, the people who make our lives more difficult, don't arrive on this country in rubber boats and dinghies coming across the channel. They arrive by private jet. Those are the people who make everybody else's lives difficult.
So why is support for Reform soaring at the moment, the way it is, unlike support for your party?
Well, support for my party is actually up on the last election as well. The Greens are headed towards a record result.
Reform's numbers have changed.
Because Reform are spreading a message that the media just constantly court. You cannot go a day without the BBC platforming Reform. I hate to say it, I'm not talking about debate night, but
that question was asked by Pauline, not by us.
Absolutely, but the amount of coverage they get is massive. If you keep telling people illegal immigration is the problem, then people are going to start to think illegal immigration is the problem. The problem in this country is that we have 1 in 4 children in poverty in one of the richest countries on the planet. It wasn't people who arrived here illegally who put children into poverty. We have public services that are desperately underfunded because the richest people in this country won't pay their fair share. And we need to do something about the reasons people are struggling. Yesterday, MSPs approved a bill brought by the Greens that will introduce rent controls in this country, that will give renters protection from eviction. The Greens have delivered free bus travel for young people. We scrapped peak fares on ScotRail. These are the things that will help people in their day-to-day lives. If politicians, if parliaments can actually solve the problems that people face, we will take the oxygen away from chancellors like Reform, who are quite happy blaming the problems in our society on illegal immigrants, because Reform are funded by the people actually causing these problems. They are funded by the citizens.
OK, all right. I want to hear more from the audience on this. Man in the back row first.
Yeah, I mean, if, let's just say hypothetically, Scotland was an independent nation, would we be even having this conversation about the likes of Farage?
And lady with the glasses in the back row as well.
I'd just like to state that I disagree quite strongly with a couple of comments made by the audience members. Many people keep on bringing up the fact of a quote-unquote illegal immigration. That's how it starts, with illegal immigration. We're talking about the same man that not just last week stated that he wants to remove indefinite leave to remain. As I see, that's what I have. So I contribute to society. I'm a uni student here. Why should I be feared into getting a British citizenship? Even though I'm proud to be Scottish, I'm proud to live here, why should I be feared into getting one, spending £2,000 to get it? But it's just about illegal immigration. I have to strongly disagree with that.
Thank you. Thank you. One more. Man in the check shirt. Yes.
Yeah, I think it's just confusion by the main parties. There's a broadly left-wing consensus among the parties, and they don't understand why Reform is popular. And it's because they have attitudes that pretty much 10, 15 years ago were normal, that most people had. Who knew it was a right-wing policy to understand that women couldn't have penises? Who knew that it was right-wing to have control over your own borders and who came in and who didn't, and to control the amount of money that we spend on benefits? Benefits are great, but we cannot afford to give benefits to everybody who comes into the country. And that's why Reform are popular, because they say what people want to hear.
Part of it is that Reform aren't being truthful with you. So we don't give benefits to everyone who comes into this country. It's just not true. So we have these kind of, this attitude is like Schrodinger's asylum seeker who's simultaneously stealing your job and on benefits. So for start, asylum seekers are not allowed to work in the UK. They're banned from working. And they are not entitled to public funds. So asylum seekers don't get social security like everybody else. They get an absolute pittance to live on every week. That's why they're struggling. But Reform are selling this idea that you have people who are coming into this country and simultaneously stealing your job and benefits. It's just not true.
Yekemi, how do you see this? Are the politicians, you're the non-politician on our panel tonight, are they right to be scared of Reform right now?
Oh, I agree that we have to be really scared of Reform. Just to everyone else's point, I mean, I've come to this country as an immigrant. The indefinite leave to remain is why I'm still in this country after 21 years, and then went on to get a British passport. And so I've come to a country that was welcoming. It's allowed me to gain education. I've had children in this country. They are now in education. And I've started businesses and given employment. Immigrants work extremely hard. So anyone that thinks that immigrants are looking for a free ride, it's completely untrue. And I think there needs to be a distinction between this illegal immigration and migration. I think that's all getting muddled.
So why do you think people are being attracted to Reform right now? What do you think is going on?
I think people are frustrated with the lack of plans for what's going on with illegal immigration. Like where I live, we've got a couple of hotels full of people, asylum seekers. We don't really know who they are, to be honest. But we're being fed this message that it's illegal immigrants in these hotels. They've been there for years, I would say at least 2 years, maybe 2.5 years. And there's no clear plan as to what's happening. Are they getting moved on? So people are frustrated, people are scared, the cost of living is going up, and we're being fed this message that it's these illegal immigrants that are causing all our problems, and it's just simply not true. And so the plans around digital ID and, cancelling indefinite leave to remain, those are not actually getting to the root of the issue. I think there's a lazy politics going on where you need to get to the heart of what's going on rather than throwing out some policy that is just going to look at a symptom, when actually there's something deep-rooted going on in Britain, and it's been going on for several years.
OK, let me jump back to the audience. I want to hear more voices on this. Man on the back row in the brown jacket. Yeah.
Isn't the real question with reform is that they're really opportunists, and they're taking advantage of the disillusionment with the existing parties and their non-achievement in addressing issues. I know we need time for the Labour Party to actually embody and then get through the changes that they were having in place. But that's going to take time, and we can't do that in 14 or 15 months. It's going to take 5 years, at least, to do that.
Thank you. And man in the white T-shirt in the back. It's all about the back row tonight. Yeah, on you go.
Yeah, so I think with taking the fight to Farage, you need to look at America in the election last year, because Trump pretty much wrote the narrative of the entire thing, and he focused on everything that people wanted to hear about, with, you know, the immediate needs of the people, like the prices of groceries and things. And the Democrats, you know, they talked about that, but they were always just responding to Trump with, you know, weak responses, and they were right about a lot of things, but he just wrote the narrative, and that's what Farage is doing. And I don't think Starmer is very good at doing that. And if he wants to win again, he needs to do that, because he's just, at the moment, he's just responding to what Farage says.
Yeah. Thank you, thank you. And one final one. Gentleman right down in the front row in the glasses here. Yeah.
Yeah, the country does have some fairly deep-seated problems, probably going back to the financial crash, then years of misguided austerity, Brexit, COVID, Ukraine war. That's thrown up a lot of issues that are complex and will take time to fix. Now, these guys have come along with simplistic answers, easy answers to difficult questions, which fall apart when you actually try and analyse them, but most people don't seem to get that far. And the thing is, we've been here before. I mean, all the lies in the bus at Brexit. I mean, you think we've seen the same playbook. And we need to recognise that, because if you let these guys in, it'll be too late. I mean, elect in haste, repent at leisure. Yeah. You know, you guys have got to counter some of the stuff they're saying with sensible, coherent arguments.
Thank you. Much more on this to come between now and next May, I'm sure. Tonight, we are in Dundee. Next week, we're going to be in Stirling. The week after that, for the first time, we're going to be in Lockerbie. So if you'd like to come along and be part of the audience for either of those shows, go to the website bbc.co.uk/debate night. And keep up the conversation as well. Hashtag is BBCDN on social media. Let's go to our second question of the night, which comes from Tim Hales. Tim, good evening.
Right here. Yep. With Scottish universities facing cuts, recruitment freezes and job losses, it looks like the funding model is broken. And if it is broken, what's the fix?
Thank you, Tim. Tonight we're at Dundee and Angus College, facing its own financial pressures as well. A report last Friday said that 9 of Scotland's universities are now in deficit. Yekemi, Otaru, your university is on strike tomorrow, I think. What's the problem behind all of this? What's going on?
I think we really need the politicians to get in a room and actually look at the different aspects of society. So education, healthcare, welfare, and look at it holistically and find a solution to this. So I'm often asked, you know, do you think that we should start charging school fees, or should we increase school fees and so on? I mean, we've benefited from not having to pay fees in Scotland, and I know that Scotland's very proud of that. But when we look at long-term sustainable models, is that a long-term plan for Scotland? I don't know the answer to that, but I know that, you know, looking at a business scenario where a lot of universities have relied so much on international students, for instance, we're facing a situation where the immigration laws are counter to that. And so you can see that there's not a joined up conversation around, well, if we make this policy here, how does it impact this other part of society? And so we really need the politicians to get into a room and have a conversation as to the long-term plan for education in Scotland. I mean, I've heard, you know, in the news about graduate tax, for instance. I mean, I have a son who's 20 years old, and, you know, he's already got student loans and so on. Yes, his education is technically free, as they say, but if on top of that he's going to pay some kind of tax later on, I mean, you have, you know, 21, 22-year-olds coming out with a lot of debt already. So it does not work long term. So we really need the key parts of government to really sit down and look at the different parts of society and look at where this funding is going to come from and take this forward for Scotland.
Maree Todd, is the funding model broken?
I don't think so, although I acknowledge the challenges there are in the higher and further education sector at the moment. I think the gentleman who spoke just before this question was asked to describe some of the headwinds that we've faced over the last 10, 15 years. We've had the financial crash. We've had austerity since 2010, 15 years of austerity. We've had Brexit. We've had COVID. And we have a global situation which is providing challenges. So many of our public services are struggling with funding at the moment. I do think we need to have a grown-up conversation about how we fund these things. I think higher and further education is vital for the sake of our country. It's good for individuals. Certainly when I got my university education, I was one of the first people in my family. My mum went to university as a mature student, so she beat me by a year. But I was one of the first people in my family to get a university level education, and it transformed my life and my opportunities. And I was able to contribute to this country hugely. So it's valuable to the nation as well as to the individuals who benefit from it.
What about skills, Maree? Because yesterday, Keir Starmer seemed to be rowing back on this 50% target to get people into university and talking more about colleges and more about apprenticeships as well. Skills rather than degrees.
So I think we need to think very carefully about what's needed for the country and how do we develop those skills. We need to also provide lots of different routes into education. So going away to university isn't the thing for every young person in Scotland. There needs to be, I think education as a whole is it's a no-brainer to me that we need to invest in education. We need to invest in young people in this country, and we need to keep investing. Education is a lifelong thing. It is about releasing potential, and of course we want to do that.
OK, man in the back row here. Yes.
Thank you. The question was around universities, and rightly so. Our university colleagues are going through significant challenges, and you only have to look at this city in particular and some of the challenges that we've seen with that. However, colleges, and the irony that we're sitting in a college tonight, have seen year-on-year reductions in funding in real terms. In 5 years, 17% reductions. I today, as a college member, had to sit in front of staff and tell them their job is at risk. Why does Scotland not value technical and further education? And if it does, why are we not funded appropriately to do so?
Michael Marra.
I mean, I think I couldn't agree more about the challenges that are faced in this city. So I think we're looking at a £2.8 million cut to the budget for the college here, a college that is consistently rated as one of the best in the whole of the country, does absolutely outstanding work with brilliant lecturers and great students. The crisis in Dundee University has been well documented. I wouldn't have to tell the story to many people in this room, I wouldn't imagine, but it's the single most important institution in the city. 1 in 7 people are students at it. Taking those people out, if were the university to collapse, would be an economic catastrophe for the city. It employs over 3,000 people, although many have left just in the last week through a voluntary redundancy scheme. And part of that is about mismanagement. There's terrible mismanagement. But the reality is they've been forced by the business model that's been imposed on them by the Scottish Government into ever higher international student recruitment to cross-subsidise not just Scottish students but research. And 2 reports came out from the Scottish Funding Council at the end of last week that said this was completely unsustainable. I think it's astonishing that Maree thinks that the business model is fine.
So what's the solution? How do you change this?
If I can, when I said this over 2 years ago, in the Scottish Parliament, the First Minister castigated me for even suggesting that there might be a problem. Well, here we are now. Hundreds of people losing their jobs, not just in Dundee, but right across Scotland, in RGU, University of West of Scotland.
So what's the solution?
So the solution is, and I agree in one part, about getting round the table and coming up with a real solution for the longer term. It has to be a way of getting more money into the system. We have to break the reliance on the subsidy and the cross-subsidy between international students and Scottish students, because it drives these institutions into ever more perverse behaviours. I would say, though, that it can't just be a solution for universities. It has to be a conversation about colleges. Because what's happened in Dundee, I know this is a lengthy statement, but what's happened in Dundee, as a result of the crisis at Dundee University, the college has lost hundreds hundreds of thousands of pounds because students have moved from the college into the university through clearing. It has to be a whole tertiary system solution. The government has to wake up to the fact they have created a complete disaster in our higher education sector that's developing right now. It's incredibly important for the future of the country, and it needs a proper solution for the whole of the country.
Maree, I'll let you come back in just a second. I know we've got students and lecturers in the audience as well. Lady of the blonde hair in the end, yeah.
I'm at the University of Dundee, and I think there's a huge misconception across the media about the impact that it actually has on students. It isn't that bad. We still have full timetables, and even with staff reductions, I can only speak for the law school, but it hasn't made that much of an impact on our lessons or how we're being taught.
So far, that's good to hear. You asked the question. What do you think about what you're hearing so far?
I'm actually a professor in the School of Medicine at the University of Dundee,
okay.
and I take what the students are saying because the professors and the faculty and the support staff are doing the best they can in the University of Dundee against really difficult times, you know, and we need a solution. We don't need to talk about the solution. We need solutions in people's manifestos before we go to vote. We need to know what all of the parties really want to do so we can vote accordingly. Okay. And it's enough of this, you know, going round and round in circles. The funding model is broken. And Scotland is losing out.
Ross Greer, do you accept that you'll be writing the manifesto for the Greens next year? When it comes to universities, is the funding model broken?
Yeah, the current funding model is not sustainable. There's two separate issues here. So every university in Scotland currently has massive financial problems. What's happened at Dundee is on a whole other level because of catastrophic mismanagement by the people who came before. And it's right that Dundee University cannot be allowed to fail. It is too big to fail for this city. It's too important. I was actually visiting the medical researchers at the university last year, seeing the life-saving work that they're doing. So it's not just that the university matters to this city. What is happening at Dundee University matters to the whole world.
So what's the new funding model that would make this work better?
So at the core of this is that the Scottish Government provides a grant to universities for the free tuition of Scottish students, but it doesn't cover the cost of it. So universities make a loss on every single one of these students, which is why they have to try and cross-subsidise by charging international students huge fees. Then the UK government, sadly Labour's doing the same as what the Tories did, make it harder for international students to come here, so the model all falls apart.
Or you could charge students who could afford to pay.
No, absolutely not. The Greens will certainly not support charging students. Education is a right, not a privilege, and if we as a society... I don't have a university degree, but I'm glad that my dentist does. I'm glad that my GP does. I'm glad that the people who built the bridge that I went over to come here had university degrees, and I'm willing to contribute towards...
So where does the money come from, Ross?
So, to pick just one example, I think a lot about our tax system is absolutely rigged. So Scotland has a £250 million subsidy scheme that's supposed to be for small businesses. So £250 million in tax that they don't pay. But it's not just for small businesses, because shooting estates owned by some of the wealthiest people, not just in this country, but on the planet, pay absolutely no tax at all because they've been able to access a tax break scheme for small businesses. In fact, there are Tory MSPs who pay no tax at all on their shooting estates because of this. So if we look at a tax system that's currently rigged in favour of the super rich, they're not paying their fair share, and we fix that, then we can properly fund the services that everybody in our society relies on.
All right. Douglas Lumsden. Is that the solution?
I just think it's laughable that Ross thinks that, you know, charging shooting estates is suddenly going to fix the university funding model. It's not. It is completely broken.
You would say that's some of your MSPs who get those tax
breaks. But
breaks.
it's nonsense to say that, Ross. This is a bigger issue than just shooting estates. And
It's a £250 million,
totally
Douglas.
think it's not broken. Maree, to think it's not broken. Your head must be in the sand. You know, we can see what's going on in Dundee. You know, that is a huge scale, but it's happening right across other universities.
Okay, and we've heard that
colleges.
from the panel. But what is the solution to it? We still don't have an answer to this, how we move forward.
I agree with Michael. The amount that the universities get paid for every student, has it increased as much as it should have done over the last 10 years? So that model that funding needs to increase. Okay, maybe we need to look as well at the amounts of degree courses that there are. Maybe that needs to shrink. We need to value our colleges more, as we heard. They're doing a great job because universities are not for everyone. And I think once we get that right, then I think we can move forward using our universities, using our colleges together.
So, Douglas, every year the rest of us have to sit and listen to the Tories coming to the Scottish Government and demanding that they spend more money, but you also argue that they should cut the taxes for the highest earners. That's not how maths works. You need to, at some point...
That's how you grow an economy. That's how you actually grow the economy, to get your tax increases.
That's how Liz Truss tried to grow the economy. Do you want to apologise for that?
No, Ross, you're absolutely speaking nonsense.
I want to hear from more people in the audience of this. A young man in the front row.
In the nature of a good debate, I'd like to provide another point of view. Also, as a student of the University of Dundee within medical school, I'd have to agree with Tim Hales, to my right here in the audience, that it's hard to ignore the anxiety felt by staff of the growing crisis that's occurring in higher educational institutions in Scotland. This is not simply an issue that's restricted to the university governance themselves, but it's also an issue that really lays on the table of the Scottish Government as well. I'd like to ask the SNP panellist specifically, how does she propose future changes that are obviously needed to be made?
Maree?
So I think there's certainly a challenge around adequate funding for all of our public institutions. I'm a junior health minister, and I recognise that all of our public services are feeling short of money at the moment. I think I agree with Ross that this funding needs to come out of general taxation. So I think I am not somebody who would advocate for charging students for their university or college education. I think there may well be something about other models. So I come from a very rural part of Scotland where earn as you learn models are very, very attractive. We have a real shortage of midwives in the far north. It would be really helpful if the apprenticeship, which has been introduced in England, were available to midwives to train on the job up in the rural highlands. So I think there are a number of solutions to the challenges that we face. I do not think the answer is to charge people to go to university. I think that education is a public good and we should all be funding it.
Thank you. Man in the grey sweater at the back. Yeah.
I would agree that education should be free in this country. 1 in 4 children live in poverty in Dundee, and a lot of them wouldn't be able to go to university, including me. I would be able to go to university to actually get an education if it wasn't for free. But the real question should be asked about the funding model, and I believe that the government should actually give more money to the institutions to make sure they survive.
Thank you. Your views on everything here tonight. The hashtag is BBCDN on social media. Let's go to our third question of the night, which comes from Chris Morris. Chris, good evening.
Hiya. Given the massive amount of renewable energy we produce, why does Scotland face some of the highest energy prices in Europe?
Thank you. Household bills up again today, 2% under the latest energy cap. Douglas Lumsden, why does Scotland face some of the highest energy bills in Europe?
Because renewable energy isn't that cheap. There's often something. It's not. If you look at the CFD prices, if you look at things like floating offshore wind, fixed wind as well, when you look at the prices of that, as well as the increased distribution costs with all the new pylons we're having to see going up right across the country, that all comes at a huge cost. So we may think that renewables is cheap, but the amount we spend to get those projects off the ground is massive.
Ross Greer?
Electricity from renewables is the cheapest way
to
generate it.
Rubbish.
The reason that our electricity bills are so high is because the system is rigged. It's tied to electricity generated from gas. And these companies obviously don't want the price to be separated. If we separate the price for electricity from renewables from the price when it's generated from gas, that would absolutely result in a huge reduction in bills for people across the country. In Scotland, we generate in the region of 98% of our electricity needs from renewables already. But the system is designed to benefit the private companies who are making a huge amount of money from this. We have an energy system dependent on companies who every single quarter are reporting billions and billions of pounds of profits, while at the same time you've got people in this country who are having to choose whether to turn the heating on or eat that night, who are having to choose between whether they're going to pay their rent or whether they're going to turn the heating on. This is happening at the same time as a tiny number of people are ending up generating and hoarding more wealth than they could spend in 1,000 lifetimes, because they're the ones who own the energy companies. They have the shares in them. They're on the boards of these companies. This is not some insurmountable challenge that we face. We have an incredible opportunity in Scotland because we have such huge potential for renewables, which are an incredibly cheap way to generate electricity. But the system, which is controlled by the UK government, so I would encourage Michael and Labour colleagues to look at this, the system is tied to how you generate electricity from gas, which for a whole range of reasons, including Russia's invasion of Ukraine, is obviously incredibly expensive. If we want to harness the full opportunity of renewables, create those jobs and reduce people's bills, we need to change how the energy market in this country works. What we've experienced for the last 40 years is the disaster of privatisation. When you take public utilities, what was publicly owned, and you hand it all over to private companies.
But Ross, we're a long way away from being able to depend completely on renewables. 78% still of our energy needs come from fossil fuels. So right now, as far as people in this room's energy bills are concerned, what's the answer to this?
So on the electricity side, as I said, about 98% of our electricity is generated, or the equivalent is generated from renewables already. The big challenge that we've got is our gas heating system in Scotland. We are still using gas for that. A lot of what we need to do there is to support people to make it easier, so grants, loans, etc., to make it easier for people to get rid of their gas boilers and replace it with a system like a heat pump, an air source heat pump, a water source, whatever it might be, because the price of electricity from renewables is going to keep going down. The price of gas is not, because it's a finite resource, it's contributing towards climate breakdown, and we end up relying on global markets that are really, really unstable. We need to get our heating system off of gas and towards heating systems that use electricity as well. That's a key part of the solution here. But to do all of this, we need to face up to the fact that 40 years of selling off energy to private companies has been a disaster. They have made hundreds of billions of pounds over this 40-year period, while generations of people in this country haven't been able to afford to turn the heating on. The system is rigged. It's not broken. It is rigged by these people.
Man with the beard on the second back row. Yeah, on you go.
Greg Jackson, who's the Chief Executive Officer of Octopus Energy, which is the largest supplier of electricity and gas in this country now, has been very clear that if there was even a regional market across the UK, Scotland would have the cheapest energy in Europe. Actually, people could afford to move over to electrical forms of heating because it would be extremely cheap. I mean, that's not a politician saying that. That's not me saying that. That's the person who heads up the company that actually provides most people with energy in the United Kingdom at the moment.
OK, Michael Marra, is that the way ahead?
Well, it is. The person who's coming up with the answer is the man who owns the technology to benefit from it. And I've seen the calculations, and frankly, I think that the marginal benefit around zonal pricing is just that. It's very marginal. The reality, though, is that what it doesn't do is deal with the fact that if we want this renewable electricity in Scotland, we have to pay for the development of it. So the infrastructure has to be put in place and the cost of doing that. Now, I agree that these bills are far too high, absolutely far too high. We've over the last 14 months, interest rates in the UK have meant that we've had cuts to the average mortgage of £1,500. Average wage has gone up by £1,800. But there's so much more that we need to do in the cost of living, particularly on energy bills. And that's a challenge for the Labour government. Ross rightly puts that to us. But I would say to Ross, we talked earlier on about simplistic solutions to complex problems. I think you've just been given much of the same. We have a complex energy market and we need to make sure that we can get off gas, but that requires us to invest in the infrastructure to do that. So it will, in the short term, be expensive to do some of those things. It's incredibly frustrating that those prices are continuing to rise, and we need to make sure we do the absolute utmost to protect the most vulnerable around that.
It's been reported tonight that Labour may be softening their stance on new explorations. What would you feel about that? How do you feel about that?
I think that oil and gas has got a long-term presence in our energy mix. That frankly, any analysis of it says that that is the case. The question is whether we import it or we produce it ourselves. We also know, and the thing that Ross didn't touch on was a sustainable base load. There's another part of the complexity. The wind turbines don't always turn. So we need to have a base load, but we do not have anything. But we don't have anything like this, the level that's required under what you're proposing thing. So we do need to do those
What
things.
I'm proposing
and they
is
cost,
that
they cost a lot,
infrastructure
but
as
they
well.
cost a lot of money, Rob.
Absolutely.
They cost an awful lot of money. Where that's coming from at the moment is in bills. And that's part of why we pay for the transition.
Michael, in terms of GB Energy, when are we getting £300 off our bill? Because I'm still waiting.
So that progress towards making that cut, which I've just been telling you about, to bills, it's a long-term project. So it gets us off of gas, get stability into the system, and deliver lower prices.
Okay, hang on a second. Maree Todd, the presumption against new exploration. Where do we stand with that?
So can I just say that far from being close to deliver that £300 discount to your electricity bill that we were promised last year during the general election, actually prices have gone up by £200, so you're £500 worse off than you were promised. I represent a part of the country where this injustice is real and it is felt hard by everyone every day. A huge percentage of the people I represent are living in fuel poverty. We're off gas grid in much of my constituency. We're reliant on electricity and on oil. It is 4 times more expensive. We spend 4 times more on heat in my part of the country than they do down in the Central Belt. So we can't wait for Labour to look at the market and fix it. We need that price unhitched from gas. You have to understand that we are sitting looking out on all this infrastructure as well. So who's generating the renewable energy? Us. Who's paying the most for their electricity? Us. It's absolutely unjust and it needs sorted now.
Yekemi, you worked in the sector. When you first came here, that's what attracted you here. How do you see this?
I think that we are going through a transition, and as a society, we're not good at transitions. So at one end, you've got oil and gas, pump, and on the other end, you've got people wanting a complete stop to oil and gas and just only renewables. I think during a transition period, there's going to be a period where you have oil and gas, and the idea is to reduce reliance on it, and then increase reliance on renewable. But we're not good at this transition. I've not really heard a clear solution to this transition period. The whole idea of transitions is that 2 realities exist at the same time. And I think that we're always on one extreme or the other. So from the politicians I hear, pump all the oil, no renewable, or the other end where it's turn off the oil, we're going to renewable. It's not going to work because you have this transition period. And oil and gas is not just to heat your homes. I mean, even the clothes on our back comes from fossil fuels. So we have to have a reasonable discussion about this and look at how we can make renewable sustainable and cheap, because it doesn't make sense that Scotland has one of the highest energy bills in Europe.
Okay, man with the beard right in the middle. Yeah, on you go.
One of the problems that we have is the UK has some of the oldest housing stock in Europe.
Yeah.
We need a massive retrofit before we start introducing renewables, because the fabric of these homes just isn't applicable to some of the solutions that you're suggesting.
And still mostly being heated with gas boilers as well. Man down here, yeah.
Yeah, what's really gets me is how unjust and immoral the amount of money the big companies, the big power companies make, year in, year out, and there's people who can't turn their heating on, people who've got no money, and we don't seem to be doing anything about it. Why are we not going for these big companies?
Thank you. And one more here, gentleman there, yes, in the white shirt. Yes, you. On you go.
Is there any more that the Scottish Government can do to make sure that we can keep the cost of living as low as we can, so that all of us can have a better future?
Oh, well, that is a big question, which we might save for another time. But let's wrap up that energy question, because there's one other subject that we wanted to get to this evening, which was asked by a lot of people in the audience here tonight. And the question comes from Niamh Mockery. Niamh, good evening.
Crime in Dundee is very prevalent, especially in the younger generation. What can be done to prevent and reduce the crime rates?
Thank you, Niamh. Last Wednesday night, just a week ago, there was a major disturbance in the centre of Dundee involving about 30 youths. Maree Todd, what can be done to prevent and reduce crime rates, especially youth crime?
So I think we need to think about the environment that our young people are growing up in. My portfolio, and actually across government, we're supporting a project called Planet Youth, which is based on the Icelandic model. So 20, 30 years ago in Iceland, what they found was that their children and young people were getting involved with drugs, alcohol, criminality, smoking. And they sat down and worked out how to change that. One of the key parts of the Planet Youth project is to ask young people what's happening in their area. So they go to 15-year-olds in schools and say, what's happening? What are you doing? How are you spending your time? What's available to you in your community? The data is then presented to the community, and the community comes up with solutions. It helps to target funding to projects that support young people. What they found in Iceland was not only did their children do less smoking, less drinking, less drugs, less crime, they spent better quality time with their families, and they were more active. And I always say I'm sports minister as well as drug and alcohol policy minister. That's how Iceland knocked England out of the Euros in 2016. So you'll get, if we invest in our young people, we will get incredible benefit from it. But we need to, what I really dislike is looking at the young people and being pejorative about young people. I started my morning this morning at Newbattle High School with a group of incredible young people who were helped me launch Women and Girls in Sport Week, which is next week. And many of the children at school are from deprived backgrounds. We need to tackle poverty.
Okay,
There's no
all right,
getting
okay,
away
I
from
hear
it.
you. Lady in the front
But
row.
I know you talked about poverty there. It's not poverty is the reason. The reason is trauma. I work within this field, and ketamine, as we all know, has become huge for young folks. And you've got to look at why they're particularly targeting that drug and then the crime from it. And ketamine is a horse tranquilizer. So it takes people completely out of their space. And I think we need to tackle it. We need more counsellors. We're needing our young folks to be able to speak about what's going on in childhood. And my kind of experience is that it's childhood trauma, whether it's sexual, physical, mental abuse. And we need to go in that and get off this thing of poverty as much. It's trauma response.
Thank you. And we know there's been a big drug problem in Dundee down the years. Yekemi, you're a parent of teenagers. How much do you worry about all this?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of thoughts that have come to mind. So one of the things that we've done in Aberdeen, so I also lead a local charity in Aberdeen, and we've been involved in the secondary schools really about providing food parcels to young people who are at risk of going home and not actually having anyone to make dinner for them. So we've been providing free food parcels. So we hear some of this, some of the drugs and some of the crime that's kind of going on. And what that's led to us launching an initiative where we've provided work placement for young people who are at risk of leaving school without qualifications, or some of them who are, people that have additional support needs. And so I think that doing more to keep the young people busy, so this is 16 and 17-year-olds, so doing more to keep young people busy, and I think we spoke about it earlier, having a few options of, different directions they could go from a career perspective, that helps keep them off things like drug and substance abuse. So that's one thing we've done. The other thing is that often there's something going on at home. So I've had experiences where the young person does want to contribute positively to society. They want to work or they want to study. But at home, their carer or parent is saying, don't worry about that. You can just be on benefits. It's not worth doing that job. It's just £13 an hour. Don't worry about that. So I think there's some education as well at home for parents and carers to have the right kind of messaging and right mindset to influence young people. And I think those things together could really help society.
Thank you. Man in the second row, yeah.
Well, I grew up in a very deprived area in Dundee, and but years ago there was a lot more community services. Yeah. Like a lot of me and my friends, as when we grew up, we had like youth workers there a lot, so you were able to speak to them about things, and they gave you some guidance out with maybe stuff you didn't want to speak to your parents about and stuff like that. I feel like that's what the youth are missing today. Like, there's nothing for them to do. Okay. They're so disenfranchised from everything. They're lost in their own minds on social media, and a lot of them are so depressed, and I think it's just, there's nothing to do.
We're getting tight on time here. Michael Marra, you worked with youth football, didn't you?
Yeah.
Is that man right?
I strongly agree with the gentleman and his analysis. You know, and I think it's the missing part in the answer that Maree gave earlier on. She talked about working with young people, speaking to them, but it's actually about what you do with them and the support that you give them, whether it's youth workers, with community groups, sport, all the kind of options we want to put. And it's frankly, that's the area of the budgets. Local government budgets have been decimated in this country when the SNP government in Holyrood have decided to cut that funding at a faster rate than any other part of the public sector. There's loads of other areas I could go into: mental health services in Dundee, drug and alcohol partnership, issues of policing and violence. But I think at the core of this, when we talk about young people, it's getting them the support that they
we're
need.
very short on time. Douglas Lumsden.
Yeah, we need to give kids things to do, but we also need to, make people safe. We need to have more bobbies on the beat. So we need to free up our police force from... doing paperwork or being in courts all the time, and allow them to do the policing that they can do so well.
Ross Greer.
So when I'm not an MSP, I'm a youth worker, and I was here in Dundee recently actually at the Hot Chocolate Trust, which I think is just a brilliant example of what a lot of young people really need, which is just some love and a sense of belonging. People who really respect them, a safe place for them to be. Part of this is about actually letting young people lead this conversation. We spend far too much time talking about young people rather than talking to them. But part of it is also, because it was mentioned earlier on about trauma, having someone that young people who've experienced trauma can go and speak to. I'm really proud the Greens pushed to increase access to counselling, educational psychologists in schools. That's happened. Thousands more young people now have access to that. Not everyone who needs it, but thousands more than was the case before. The problem's the next step. So many of these young people who are experiencing that do need referred on to NHS mental health services. So they can get access to a psychologist in school straight away, and then they get referred on and they're on a 3-year wait list.
Ross, I want to give the last word to a young person. That man there, on you go.
I do feel like there is a bit of an us versus them mentality in society right now. And for young people and old people, we see young people do this bad, old people do this bad. We should put the funding to old people, we should put it to young people. If we look at society as a whole and fund the whole of society and see how we can do better as a larger group of people, that would make everything
break down the barriers.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. And that's it from us for tonight. Thank you very much indeed for watching. Next week, we're going to be in Stirling. Week after that, Lockerbie. Take a look at the website if you want to come along and join us. If you missed any of tonight's show, we're repeated on BBC One Scotland a little bit later, or you can watch any time that suits you on the BBC iPlayer. Thank you very much indeed to my panel here tonight and to our audience here in Dundee and to you at home for watching. We will see you next week in Stirling. In the meantime, stay safe, stay well. From all of us in Debate Night, good night.